because, of course, doing research, and specifically with strawberries, I really need data to make decisions. But I'm really keen to hear why, for example, is important for other people data. So if, Dan, you can start and tell me why for you data are important in the CEA field you would be great.
So yeah, for us especially, seen as one of the things is you can conveniently see behind me, we develop container farms. So as much as that being a growing operation, it is a whole business. And you know, data, I think it's kind of a slightly ambiguous term as well in terms of like what it's being used for. But you know, data is for us used from everything from planning the very start of a business to looking at what the opportunity is, and you know, firstly modeling whether that business would work and proving on paper. And it's used all the way then from right the way through improving your operations, benchmarking how you're performing, comparing that and improving on that year on year. So, you know, it really is the sort of backbone of everything that we do in an operation. And we'll probably discuss it here, but it starts off with really, really simple things. It starts off with just understanding the sort of consumable costs that are coming in, but in the much more, maybe for want of a better phrase, the much more sort of sexy aspects of data, when you're looking at improving crop yields, where you're looking at sensing, monitoring crops while they're growing and trying to feed all of this information back into your growing operation to improve it. So yeah, we use it. We see it much more from sort of end to end of a business, from the implementation of any sort of container or business right the way up to what that final product is, that final crop is.
Thank you, Dan. Kathryn, I know you can say a lot about this question, so the floor to you.
Sure. Obviously, well, data is an incredibly important aspect of growing, whether you're talking about the traditional growing sectors or within controlled environments. And it's always been important. It's the main foundation of what we make the decisions on, the process control, the logic. Everything is based on that data which is coming in. And in order for us to be able to make improvements or to make decisions moving forward, then the importance of that data is you know, well, it can't be understated really. But moving forward from just that sort of base data, data has, well, it contains patterns, doesn't it? So those relationships that holds the knowledge of how we're going to be able to move forward, to be able to create and digitize maybe that knowledge and build services that we'll be able to provide to help growers moving forward, which in this day and age as well is particularly important for the number of growers who are out there who have got the knowledge and experience. If you look at how long it takes to learn how to fly a plane, and then if you look at how long it takes to learn how to grow a crop successfully, quite often we expect in the traditional protected horticulture industry that 10,000 hours is around about enough for you to become an experienced grower. So moving forward, feeding the world, all that sustainable future, we have to find ways of being able to convert that data and to provide the tools and the tooling so that we can get more people on board to help sustain that process.
Thank you, Kathryn. Nicole?
Wow, most of it's already been said. Yeah, I think, well, obviously, we're coming from a IoT background. Data is our bread and butter. I think it's extremely important in terms of addressing some of the challenges that we still see in CEA, namely sustainability being one of them. Thereby I mean economic and environmental sustainability, and also kind of doing this outreach work in terms of educating the end consumer about the merits of controlled environment agriculture growing. So data can, to my mind, is underutilized in terms of telling stories as well. Data is an extremely powerful tool in telling stories, So there we should make more use of data to inform the end consumer, because at the end of the day, without the end consumer at the end of the chain, we'll all be out of a job. So let's face it. And I think there needs to be a lot more work in that direction. And yeah, we can't do it without data. And I think another really important point is data is only as good as its validity. So we need to find a way of kind of having the evidence-based the evidence there that the data is actually reliable and we can work with the data. That's another really important point.
Yeah, which actually can be linked with traceability and transparency, potentially certifications as well. And one thing I can add is basically plant health, and of course research. For me, if I didn't have like data, I couldn't do research. We couldn't, figure out how plants behave. So plant health is very, very closely connected with data. So again, one easy question before we go to the very long one, the challenges of data, is where data can be used for, like probably profitability, we can say, yields and things like that. Very briefly, where do you think and where you use data yourselves in a CEA environment? Kathryn, if you can go first.
Wow, the possibilities are kind of endless, really. There is so many things, almost everything you can use data for in terms of what you could do moving forward. Predictive maintenance, for example, could be an area that that you can look at. Autonomous growing, so more controlled environments with less decision making that is required by a grower, perhaps. Anomaly detection, incident prediction, harvest yields, production yields, all sorts of things, tying all of these different types of the parts of the process through so that a business can become more profitable. So if you look at being able to tie all these things together and having the sales team involved, having the pack house involved, having every aspect of a business involved with that data and running through it, the end goal would be to make that business a much more profitable and sustainable business moving forward into the future. So yeah, so many different things that data can have a really positive effect to increase profitability, and to reduce things like pest and disease and other plant health factors, for sure.
Yeah, more or less everywhere, really.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Nicole, Dan, do you have to add anything there? Because we can say everywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of like, everywhere. You can't envisage life without data in general, can you? I mean, nowadays it's I kind of said it at the beginning that the evidence base, and you mentioned the traceability aspect, that I think is hugely important, because as we all know, where there's a controlled environment and we control the create the perfect climate and conditions for the plants to grow, there might also be some pathogens that might grow quite well in there. So this whole aspect of food hygiene becomes even more pressing, and traceability, and having this evidence-based traceability right down to, well, you can do the full life cycle analysis right down to even before seed, if you really want to. And I think as Kathryn, as you said, tying all of these business processes together is key. And at the moment, there are lots of different platforms out there, but it's difficult to unite all of them on one single pane of glass. So this is what we've decided to do. Kind of trying to unite many functions, because a lot of people find themselves with X amount of different software packages just to resort back to an Excel sheet again. So the way that you work with the data, I think, is also really important. For some people, Excel might work, for others not, but it's you know, as data grows and the volume grows, then you're nodding away. I'll be quiet now, Dan.
No, I was just saying, I just agree with all of that, and really important not to just think of data as just in terms of the part of the sort of food system that CEA plays, but everything that's coming into that, all your seeds, consumables, everything must follow that single pathway again, and going out the back, going out of harvest, out of packaging into you know, wholesale consumers, so that you have this whole chain that's hopefully, and in the future, all talking to each other. So you're able to work out how long things are lasting on shelves, and when you're getting potentially new cultivars, new variants of seeds coming in, what the impact that might be, all the way up to the chain. So just making sure we've kind of spoken about it already, that common language between not just what's happening within your CEA operation, but making sure that everything outside of that your business interacts with is also on the same language, and being able to talk to each other and transfer that information back and forth.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And actually, the conversation goes towards the challenges. And this is my next question, actually. So which are the main challenges for data, and how can we safeguard our data? Are those data ours? So Nicole, what's your opinion? What are the main challenges of data for you?
For me or for my clients?
Good question. Maybe
well,
either.
In my daily work, I think, as I mentioned, finding good ways of managing the data and you know, working with the data is really important. But obviously, there's this whole point of security as well. You know, making sure that you provide absolutely watertight data security is absolutely key. So, Kathryn, I think you're a good person to comment on that as well. But yeah, I think that is one of the challenges, and very, very important to have a very good data management plan, and we personally work on Microsoft Azure, for example, where you get all the security that you require, and yeah, so there are means and ways of getting around it, and making sure that it's all safe. So that is one challenge, and like I said, the way of translating. You mentioned the language. You know, basically translating the data into a language that people can understand and work with. That's another one. But maybe Kathryn, because we talked about this yesterday as well. Maybe you want to jump in.
Sure. I think moving forward, you know, that there are so many risks associated with data that. And we're seeing more and more of it. I mentioned recently that we have had customers who have been hacked, you know, for example, and the old way of doing things, with having you know, software based on servers, with having controllers being linked via VPN or TeamViewer or LogMeIn, or you know, some such service like that, you know, provides an element of risk there. And I think most main companies now are moving their products and services into the cloud, as Nicole has mentioned. You know, we're exactly the same. We use Microsoft Azure as well as our platform as a service for, you know, for the services that we provide. And when you're using a particular service like that, it means then that the customer can not only rely on the sort of the security aspects that Microsoft as a company, for example, look after, but it's that ideology as well of the data belonging to the person who's paying the bill, as opposed to Priva or as opposed to Microsoft. So choosing the right platform is a good place to start. I think also when you have that particular level of access, then even if the system should get hacked, everything is compartmentalized. Whereas if somebody gets into your system via a VPN, for example, then they're accessing your servers directly. You know, so they could actually gain access to everything which is attached to your network, your server network. So there's huge amounts of risk there, not just for the growing side of the business, but for everything else, that's attached to those servers. So that there is a huge element of risk nowadays, and yeah, there have been reports of businesses having been attacked in that particular manner. I think also there is the perspective of the grassroots stuff as well. So ensuring that the sensors and the information that you're gathering from that level is is done in a secure way. So, and that you're looking after and maintaining those particular sensors as well. So that's kind of the other level, if you like, the grassroots side of things, because your data, your processes are reliant on the quality and the reliability of those sensors as well, coming, or the inputs that you're getting from that setup. So ensuring that they're working correctly and within the appropriate parameters is a big point to be made as well.
Thank you, Kathryn. Dan, over to you. What's your opinion about challenges?
Yeah, the main challenges for me, so coming from sort of like growing background, is making sure that data that you're collecting is as useful as possible from the outset. We've done sort of loads of work. I mean, I'm not from a data background. I've done, a sort of background in science. I think in my head, I know what is useful data to collect or not, and what is a useful form to collect or not. But I can remember in a previous role we had a data scientist. They were doing a PhD in something incredibly technical, and they came and did a little bit of work with us, and with the idea of beginning to get our sort of like data sets in order, and to begin to put a bit more of an emphasis on what the data we're collecting, and trying to find something useful out the back of that. And our inexperienced data gathering really showed as we gave it to sort of a professional in the business. And the first step of sort of any data scientist is all about like cleaning the data and getting rid of any anomalies, or getting rid of any data that isn't useful. And yeah, I can tell you that when they looked through the data that we'd collected over sort of 18 months or so, there was not very much left of it after they'd been through their cleaning. So it's a real importance for me, and having learned from experience, is from the start, or whatever your operation is really working out what the valuable data is that you're collecting, and making sure that you're collecting that in a useful way that can be interpreted and can be used later down the line, and having that strategy. And I'm sure that's something that Nicole has kind of worked with and is core to what you guys are doing. But yeah, that's the number one for me, is making sure that your data gathering collection is not in vain.
So actually, we're talking about the format of data. So they need to be at the right format. And for example, when we have spreadsheets and we have all sorts of notes, and comments in one column, we need to be able to manage them as well as possible. So a specialist, when actually gets in hand those data, to be able to do something with them. So we talk about format and common language, which is really important.
Can I just make one other point?
Of course.
Just speaking as a manufacturer that has to quite often integrate other solutions, and then thinking that about that aspect of it, right from the beginning, about how you're going to integrate disparate services into together to get a common working platform, whether that be at the local level or whether that be at cloud level, and having data being integrated through, is again, it's worthwhile thinking, about right from the beginning, because as Dan rightly says, organizing that data, if you start off with a good plan to start off with, then it certainly helps the process rather than trying to sort it out afterwards.
Yeah, sure. And something Nicole mentioned is which platform you are actually using. Either, you use a specific broad spectrum, platform, or whether that is safe, whether, what is the way they treat your data, as mentioned, whether those data belongs to the grower or belongs to the company, and how those data are treated. One question related with the challenges is about sharing of data. So what's your opinion about sharing of data in CEA? I mean, this is one of those things that we know. No one says anything about how they grow because of IP. So what is your opinion about sharing your CEA data you create?
Well, I can honestly say that when it comes to vertical farms and indoor growing projects, I've never had a project where I haven't had to sign or where Priva has not had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Particularly, I think in this particular sector, it's a tremendous challenge. The level of capital expenditure required into setting up a facility, etc. On top of, just ordinary growers, you go to any grower in around the world, and most of them don't want to share their data because it's their competitive edge. That's what they see it as being. And certainly, particularly in CEA, if you are successful at it, then you don't want to share why, because you want to retain that competitive edge. So it is a massive, massive challenge. I think there are ways around that, whether it be through independent third-party regulation that, or just within particular sort of growers getting together who are growing the same crop and make those agreements individually. But yeah, it's a very, very difficult subject for most people, I think, within this sector.
Thank you, Kathryn. Nicole, what's your opinion about sharing data? Sorry, sharing or selling? Sharing. My accent, sorry.
Yeah, it's yeah, I totally agree with what Kathryn said. I think it's amazing that's how protective the industry still is, and I can understand, as you said, Kathryn, it's very much like the growth recipe, or is also your recipe for success. I think it's only partly the case, because it will also be, how you run your business, what are the processes, and how do you integrate all of that. I think that's another really important aspect of it. Hence, again, my personal wish for everybody to kind of just take a step back and adopt a more of a holistic approach, kind of like a helicopter approach, and to look at all of the different cogs in the system that need to be adjusted. So yeah, and I mean, during my work with the standardization committee, I've also noticed, speaking to a lot of growers, asking the question, which data would you be willing to share? What kind of, because in order to set up a benchmarking scheme, you obviously need the willingness to share data, even albeit in an anonymized form, but still, there is quite a bit of reluctance in terms of even sharing basic environmental, like sort of climatic data, because people are worried about other people being able to deduce the growth recipe. So it's still very much of a closed shop in that regard, which I think is actually holding the industry back a bit in terms of maturing or growing. The other thing that I find is that unfortunately a lot of component providers also lock in data, so they make it difficult to integrate, because we have basically come in, and that's our daily bread, is also integrate third-party systems into, or get the data from third-party systems and unite them on one single pane of glass. And it's not always that easy. But I find that there is a propensity to open up. So a lot of the component manufacturers and solution providers have realized that we kind of need to work together in order to really basically exploit the the full market potential as well. So, that's maybe another side of the coin that it's not so well known or much talked about.
Can I just quickly come back in on that one as well, because I recognise a lot of what Nicole has just said as well, and certainly I have to say Priva has been guilty of that for sure. Until probably 5-10 years ago, really, it was a very proprietary system. But I think with the integration of cloud services and such like, then there is a much more open opportunity for companies to be able to integrate at that particular level. And also there's been lots of possibilities as well at the local level for using communications protocols and accepting data at the local level as well. So I think a lot of companies in our position, for example, where traditionally we might have been seen as being quite a bit of a closed shop, there's far more option available now for that side of things, I think.
Thank you,
I can
Kathryn.
confirm that, Kathryn, and I'm very glad that Priva decided to go down that route.
Yeah. We have sorry, slight advert. Okay. With the Priva open platform, there's the possibility of APIs, for example, and interfacing at that particular level now. Yeah.
Thank you, Kathryn. So Dan, what's your opinion about sharing of data? Who is sharing their data? Who is not sharing their data?
Yeah, that's the key question for us. So we work probably as much in terms of projects with people groups who are experienced growers as we do with sort of new entrants into the market. And when working with experienced growers, I mean, people who've been in the industry 5, 10, 15, 20 years, over, maybe in vertical farming now, but have been in traditional agriculture, outdoor agriculture, greenhouses, and the data, their knowledge, that's all their IP. They've built that up over years and years. And as mentioned by everyone previously, that's something that they really, really hold close to their hearts. On the flip side of that, when we're working on projects or anything with new entrants, and even when you have people coming in who are interested in getting into, vertical farming, container farming, when we're talking about what our products are, one really, really key thing that really appeals to a lot of them is the sort of sharing of data, coming in with very little knowledge, being much more open to, and probably to an extent reliant on, a group of people all growing in the same system, sharing information, working with us and with our R&D farm that we have here, to develop, the crop recipes, develop operations, which is a real flip side to what the sort of mentality is of those people who've been in agriculture. And you cannot blame people who've been working away for 20 years or so, accumulating these skills and knowledge. So one thing that we've kind of been looking at and will continue to look at in the future is how you can in some way balance and maybe enable those experienced growers with all of that knowledge and IP behind them, a way of profiting from passing some of that information or knowledge, through, Kathryn mentioned like some sort of third-party platform. Maybe that's with us, maybe that's an independent body to us, but a way of passing that information from them to the more inexperienced growers, the new entrants into the market. Because like we just mentioned, there are so many other issues, so many problems that we need to tackle as an industry. We're still a very sort of immature industry compared to what we're competing against often, bringing down the cost of technology. There's so much more that needs to be done, and getting everyone upskilling as many people to be as good at growers as they possibly are is something that we have that knowledge in and around the industry. And so, I was going to say the phrase leveling up, but for want of a better phrase, don't quote me on that. I'm not interested, but bringing everyone up to the same level in terms of their growing and agronomy skills is really, really, really key and important.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And what we see is happening actually, people reinvent the wheel. So many companies, they have found solutions in, you know, optimum growing conditions in a certain, you know, light regime or like different things and different specific species, but they don't share it because it's their own IP and they're not willing to share the data. And we see we are doing the same thing, everyone. We try, you know, to reinvent that wheel. But this is not very efficient, especially if we start talking about sustainability and, you know, bringing this industry, the whole CEA industry, further level up. So one more question. What do you think are the latest opportunities related to data? How can we utilize data and, you know, how we can do the best out of them? What are the latest opportunities? Nicole, over to you.
I think, Kathryn, you mentioned it earlier. It's the predictive element. I think that's going to become more and more important. You know, as we gather the data and we gather lots and lots of data, sometimes, in my opinion, far too much data, it will become extremely powerful in terms of, you know, trying to correlate certain factors. You know, I mentioned, you know, it's a big machine and there are lots of different small cogs in that machine, and you know, if you adjust one, you know, that has an impact on the entire system. So, you know, being able to kind of twin that maybe through like digital twinning and modeling that scenario, and to kind of, you know, we're kind of doing it already, but I think that's going to become even more important and more autonomous. You know, the systems are going to become more and more intelligent. I don't think they're ever going to replace humans. I don't believe that we should do either. I think it's something, that's my opinion anyway, I think it's something to remove the human input out of food production is, to me, somehow, to do so completely is, to me, somehow alien. You know, we kind of need to be closer to our food. But I think, yeah, the predictive element, this whole artificial intelligence, digital twinning is going to become more and more important. Also in terms of modeling your sustainability performance, for example, you know, that's another really important thing. Yeah, so that's why I see huge potential.
And of course, benchmarking.
And benchmarking,
yeah.
Mentioned countless times previously.
Yeah. Dan, what's your opinion? How we can utilize and get a great opportunity out of data?
Yeah, I think one of the real opportunities of data, and one of the real opportunities of agriculture in general, moving to a much sort of, smarter 21st century platforms. I mean, there'll be a whole range of people here from a whole range of different backgrounds. And one thing that the influence of data and the influence of the new tech that will have on agriculture is bringing more people into the sphere of agriculture and being able to help and work on more solutions to some of the problems that we have sort of globally. Really beginning to enable to bring in a sort of, another generation of people into agriculture, which for a long time has sort of, has not been at the forefront of people's minds to go in. And, we want people from all over the world, and we want people from a whole range of different backgrounds, be that people developing sensor platforms, database structures, working with AI to help with plants growing indoor and outdoor. So I think the beginning of the impact that data can have, for me, one of them is just being able to really bring in a real diverse background, and hopefully it's something that the whole industry will be able to benefit from.
Thank you, Dan. Kathryn, what's your opinion?
I think, there's a couple of main areas. I think one is about autonomous growing and or giving growers the tools in order to be able to, for them to clearly visualize what is happening and to make the decisions that they need to make. I agree with Nicole that you know, that human element of and having a grower interacting with their crop is still going to be important in the future, but maybe we'll be able to give them the opportunity to make those decisions easier and quicker, and also for them to be able to operate maybe multiple establishments, or you know, or larger areas than they would have done previously, for example. So I think there are a series of tools, and with us digitizing that knowledge and yeah, as Nicole says, creating digital twins to be able to help with those processes, then that is certainly one aspect. I think also that it's about the capability of tying all of these things together, and so that we can able to optimize the profit, you know, that you're able to get from that particular installation. So, and that's not just about optimizing yield or quality, but it's, you know, when's the best time to harvest? You know, what's the next problem going to be? It's that predictive forecasting, and being able to build that into a business to make it more sustainable for the future.
Thank you, Kathryn. That was really good. Thank you, all three of you. So we have a few questions. And if the audience wants to go on the Q&A on the link Johnny has sent and vote which questions would you like to be asked. So I will start with the top one. And one question we have is, what is the first step a new grower should take when wanting to begin data collection?
So beginning data collection. So I think obviously it's having well, the very first stage is having the sensors integrated in with a system which can then provide you that, you know, that data in a good way, in a good format. So ensuring that the sensors themselves are in good working condition, that the data that they're going to be providing is you know, going to be of a good quality, and then almost it's how far do you want to go? So I probably need a little bit more context about the question, I think, maybe before giving a fuller answer.
I don't know, Tom, if you want to unmute and ask further your question, please feel free to do so if you wish. Okay, we will go at the next question. So it's a bit broad question from Asher. Asher, if you want to ask this question live, feel free.
Yeah, so I'd love to. What does academic collaboration typically look like? And have you done it in the past, or are you open to it now?
Yeah, I can take this. So academic collaborations are absolutely key for what we want to do at Let's Grow. Part of our sort of service and offering is really understanding the crops and really understanding how things integrate and work with our system. And an awful lot of that is done in our R&D farm that we have here in Bristol. We have within the sort of Let's Grow team, we've got you know, a couple of growers and agronomists and a plant scientist, and some people working on more of the R&D engineering side. But one thing that we're regularly doing is looking at having that we have a couple of PhDs that are sponsored, so more long-term projects, but also offering sort of 3-month placement, PIPS placements, they're often referred to in the UK, where for sort of 3 months, academics, be it from an engineering background, a biology background, plant science background, will come in and work on a project with us that's kind of related to what we're doing here, a current current research topic. And yeah, look at, you know, a sort of 3-month, 4-month program of work, really investigating something into a much greater level and depth, using that, be it a master's student or PhD, using their set of skills to really drill into something that we want to find out here, rather than having sort of 1 or 2 experts in a few things here on the sort of books at Let Us Grow, one thing that we really want to make sure is that we're getting a real diverse background of people from different areas of plant science or biology that are coming in and doing little projects with us, hopefully offering a different experience for someone that's doing a PhD in an industrial role or in a commercial role, and then us benefiting out the side of that, of really having a good bit of detailed work that can hopefully then move into the sort of the projects that we're running here.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Kathryn, if you want to add anything, I'm sure Priva is open for collaborations.
Yeah, absolutely. In the past, we've worked with many different institutions. They've usually been about specific projects in mind, whether that's been through from a particular company or seed company or etc. And but yeah, for our own purposes, then we've worked with institutions like Wageningen and typically in the Netherlands. So we have worked with R&D facilities all over the world.
Yeah, thank you. So if anyone really wants to collaborate with Let Us Grow, Priva or Cultinova, you can have a look on the Eventbrite page and see the LinkedIn profile of Kathryn, Dan and Nicole, and feel free to contact them. Guys, if you want to also post your email address on the chat and people can get in touch with you, it's up to you. So we have an anonymous question, which I find quite interesting. How do we ensure that data collection is accessible to small-scale community-based grower in order to support and enrich social sustainability?
I think again, probably it might depend on whether you're talking about an existing installation and about how to get data out of that existing installation, or whether you're talking about something that's more in the future. I don't know if they can answer that question.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go on. No, go on.
No, it's okay, Dan.
I was going to say for the sort of smaller scale vertical farm, of which there are loads and loads in the UK and more popping up at the time. Sort of lifestyle business type. I think it's really, really key that larger companies do their bit in helping with research and helping in publishing white papers and offering out resources to everyone else that's growing in the community. I think with regards to data, I think it's having an understanding of what the really important bits, what are you trying to sort of answer. This kind of goes a little bit back to the first question that we were asked as well, but it's all about understanding like what problem are you trying to solve. Are you just trying to understand if your yields are consistent throughout the year? Are you trying to understand if this irrigation method is slightly better than this, or this environmental temperature is slightly better than this, and taking it a little bit back to sort of like looking at it as a bit more of like a science experiment. But I'd certainly like to see more work done by a more sort of external facing work done by companies like ourselves here, in offering resources and being able to help out the sort of like the grassroots of the industry.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And I can say as well, with my background and experience, probably if you can have one single platform for a small installation might be good. So people that don't have to juggle with different Excel spreadsheets, Google and all these different things. And maybe again, if you want to collect data like which seeds or how the crop has grown, definitely yield is a very important information you need to know.
I think maybe if I may add to this, Katya, I think maybe another important message is when you starting out, obviously the capital expenditure is significant in our industry. So I think finding a solution where, as you said, Ben, you can pilot and you can trial, and finding a system solution that allows you to scale, kind of something that scales with your business, I think is also a very good idea.
Thank you. We have a question about polytunnel, which, if I have understood the question correctly, or if the person who wrote the question wants to answer the question live, feel free.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It was just a question about the use of polytunnels being, I think the issue of cost has been mentioned here. The use of polytunnels is a cheaper option for quite a few people wanting to have an entry level. And I was just trying to understand how data acquisition can be applied in such a basic setup, as it were, with a view to scaling up, not just on a local basis, but possibly continental basis as well.
I think some of the challenges that you see with projects in rural, can't say it, rural areas can be that sort of infrastructure requirement for getting data from from the polytunnels to where you need it to go. That can be an issue sometimes, but I think if you have as much data as you've got coming in through a single source system, then there are methods, as long as you can get the connections there in place, to be able to then transfer that data out. So yeah, we've already spoken about the benefits of cloud, but this is one of the problems, is having a good enough broadband connection, in some places. So, but certainly once you've got the information and it's going up there, then being able to have multiple portfolio of sites and being able to compare and contrast data, then that's all achievable.
Yeah, I could add also potentially, if you talk about polytunnels, you definitely want information about weather, because you cannot control environmental conditions as in very close control environment, either vertical farming or glass house. So definitely environmental conditions, and definitely yield, I would say, which is very, very basic information and data you want to get. And of course, anything else you can add, subject you have connectivity, as Kathryn mentioned, definitely is going to be useful. I will go to the next question. So, Maddie, would you like to ask the question live? I can ask, so that's not a problem. So experts and internet correction are not a worldwide in countries use data to improve their agricultural practices. Has been partially answered, but if you have anything to ask, respond, guys, feel free.
Sorry, Katya, my internet was just...
Yeah, you broke up a little bit on me, yeah. I'm afraid, so I missed part of it.
That's okay, I can ask again. Is my accent as well? So
no, it was
you're
the
very
internet,
nice.
Definitely.
it was definitely a dropout.
So Mandy is asking about experts and internet connection, which are not a worldwide resource, so they don't have access to experts and internet connection everywhere in the world. How can developing countries use data to improve their agricultural practices?
I think obviously if you can't get the connectivity in place to be able to transfer that data out, then it probably is a case then of only being able to access that maybe locally. So but it's as long as you've got the system there collecting the data, there's still a lot which can be done on a local basis, and obviously then that data can be shared, even if it's just a case of exporting to Excel or or printing off or whatever, if that helps the communities that's that are out there in order to be able to improve techniques, etc., then that there are always possibilities, I think. But I know it's easy for us to talk about the benefits of technology, but if you haven't got access to that, then it does make things a little bit more difficult, unfortunately. So yeah.
Anything else to be added, Nicole or Dan? Otherwise, I'll go to the next one.
No, I agree with Kathryn. I mean, there could be sometimes that you could consider using mobile phone signal only and then upload the data later, you know, once you get like a, but then obviously you don't have the real-time picture. It's kind of delayed, but there is still a way of doing it. But again, you know, the digital divide does become obvious then, and kind of stares you in the face.
Thank you. Rob, we have a question from Rob. Rob, would you like to ask the question live? So I will ask that question. Rob is asking, what happens to data generated using public research investment? Innovate UK has spent money in this area. Does that data get shared, used for public good? Very good question.
Very good question. Should be someone from Innovate UK answering that. Really. I think it always depends on the collaboration agreements, and you know which is drawn up between the consortia partners. From where my experience, the Innovate UK projects that we've been involved in were, you know, the data was open to the public. You know, there's been publications and things. So I think the general approach is to share as much data as possible, as long as it doesn't infringe anyone's IP. That's my understanding, but I'm not representing Innovate UK, so but that's my interpretation of it.
Yeah, unfortunately,
Maybe Dan or Kathryn have got a different opinion.
I was just going to say, unfortunately, I can't really comment, because obviously, you know, Priva is a Dutch company, so we you know, we don't tend to get involved. Well, we can't really get involved with agreements with Innovate UK directly. So
yeah, I definitely should be able to give a better answer to this, because the building that I'm sitting in is part funded. The project was part funded by Innovate UK. Unfortunately, I'm not on the board at Innovate UK and can't confirm for every project, but there was certainly not so much. This was more of a project to then be able to support education. So there are a certain amount of things that we then have to demonstrate in the years following our Innovate UK grant that we're still doing, to be able to sort of confirm that, you know, the money that was put in is being put to good use, and it's not just, we're not going to, you know, take everything for ourselves, and that, you know, we're going to support a certain number of sort of research projects. Also, there was a lot of work done on anything that was done here was done by, or was worked with by, sort of local contractors, or the research was held within sort of like the Bristol area, so promoting again people that we're working with in the local area. So although it's sort of different in terms of like a data, not necessarily a project that has like sort of data coming out, but also has sort of like social impact in the area and environmental impact in the area, part of the sort of like the grander impact that the Innovate UK want their projects to make, as well as creating and generating sort of data and interesting sort of research projects.
Thank you, Dan. And what I have to add there is that when you apply for Innovate UK, there is a data management plan. So you have to demonstrate how you are going to utilize the data and how those data are going to be available or not later. So maybe if you go and have a chat with Innovate UK, you can find where those data in specific projects are stored and what's the plan about them. So that's it for now. We have a few more questions, but we are done with time. We don't have any more time. And I would like to thank you for being here and participating in this webinar. Thank you very much, our three panelists. It was a pleasure having the opportunity to meet you a bit more in person and to collaborate for this webinar. Thank you very much, Johnny, for your technical support with Slido. And this webinar is going to be available on YouTube in probably next week, I would say, putting some pressure on Johnny. And if you need to ask more questions on Kathryn, Dan, and Nicole, you will find them on LinkedIn, and their mails have been posted on the chat. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Katja. Thanks, Johnny, for the music.